Quick note how things will work today. We again have a wonderful training on advocating for food systems priorities from our friends at Shepherd's Table, Brenna Olson. Once that is done, we are going to move into a community conversation about things that we might want to be advocating for together as a community during this budget session. And to kick that all off, I am happy to turn things over for a introduction from Craig Rice, the new executive director at Manna Food Center, to kind of kick us off with a call to action in this space. So Craig, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Anne Marie. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my predecessor, the great Jackie DiCarlo, for all of her phenomenal work with Manna over a decade of service to our community. Um, Let me just start off, and I've been in back-to-back calls this morning. I'm just hopping off a call with the Office of Community Partnerships with Montgomery County, talking about this very issue. And I want to make sure that folks understand and put all of the pieces together. Manna has translated over decades from an organization that was primarily focused on just food to understanding how much it's important for us to really create a wraparound system of support, not only for people who are experiencing food insecurity, but also the root causes of that hunger. And we need to understand a couple things, and this is where the call to action comes in. I want folks to understand that Maryland has the longest wait times in the nation when it comes to seeing an emergency physician at a hospital. Why is that important? I'm going to come to it in a second. The leading cause of bankruptcy amongst individuals is healthcare related issues and being able to afford that tumultuous health sort of event that families oftentimes experience and don't have the resources to be able to pay for. What we are trying to do is to make sure that through our advocacy efforts, we address those root causes, understanding that so many people in our community have health issues that then cause them to experience these kinds of conditions that make them financially unstable. And so it is not just about workforce. It is about eating healthy. It is about educating people about nutrition education and how, especially people of color and people who have economic disadvantages, are experiencing less healthy outcomes. And those things directly impact their ability to be gainfully employed, to actually continue on the projection of getting increases in salary and bonuses and new sorts of job opportunities, but then also to protect them from the very things that we see that happen, whether it's COVID or the new measles outbreak. These are things where we know that our communities that are financially disadvantaged oftentimes are more susceptible to these kinds of issues. It is not just about our federal workforce. And I want folks to remember and understand that we oftentimes find ourselves in these places to where we're solely focused on these issues that are first and foremost in our minds. But there are other underlying root causes that have been there for decades that have severely impacted the ability for us to make sure that our families and our communities remain healthy and stable and self-sufficient. And so it is important for us to reclaim our food in our communities. It is important for us to lift up our farmers and make sure that it is not just about providing food for schools and for food banks, but the reality is that they also serve as workforce development opportunities for so many of our immigrant communities who come into this country from agriculture-rich communities and countries and nations. Connecting our folks to this industry, making sure that they play a part in providing for the very communities we're looking to serve. There is so much that we can do around this that is not related to the federal government and the federal government shortfalls, that we owe it to folks to focus on these as well as addressing the issues that we see with this current administration. I remain as frustrated as you, and we are a nonpartisan organization. And so I want to be very clear that we remain frustrated about the situation we find ourselves in because we see folks that are cast into a system that is already overrun with inequities. We know that the people who serve the federal government, whether they be folks who have contracts for cleaning, whether they have contracts to be the dry cleaners that are servicing these, that are primarily people who are of lower socioeconomic status, also are heavily impacted by these government cuts as well. So we have a big job to do. We have a big job to do in making sure that we're addressing the health issues, and health is wealth in our communities. The healthier a person is, the more they can focus on their jobs and be more effective. The healthier a person is, the more focused they are in school and being able to perform and aren't locked up or put in detention as a result. The more that folks have access to food, they're healthier, and means that they're not showing up in our hospitals and being overrun with bills. We know that all of these things are there, and we can actually do something about them, collectively working together to strengthen our food infrastructure system. That is where MANA stands, ready to work with you, ready to advocate, ready to educate, and ready to feed. And so I am just happy to be a part in building and stepping on the great shoulders of Jackie and the team at MANA to continue this great work and lifting up each and every one of you to continue to do this great work. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Craig. Lots of muted applause, but all the same, thank you for your words. Thank you for kicking us off today. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Brenna Wilson at Shepherd's Table to lead us in our advocacy training for today. Thanks so much, Brenna.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig, for a very rousing speech. I'm feeling very ready to advocate right now. And today we're going to go through a workshop with some tools where we can really start that process. My name is Brenna Olson. I'm the advocacy manager at Shepherd's Table. I've been here for about 2.5 years. Just a quick background on us. We address food insecurity and homelessness all over the county through our Beyond the Table program, but we mostly serve our daily meals every single day here at Progress Place in Silver Spring. I've also listed what our other programs are just to kind of show you what type of food assistance provider we are. But I mainly work with the advocacy program. The purpose of today's training is to equip the food system network, so that's all of us, with extra tools to partner with the communities that we serve to advocate towards ending food insecurity. And like Craig mentioned, we want to work towards a future where we don't need to do this work anymore. And so it's really important that we partner with our communities to find those solutions. So like I said, we're going to go through some practical application, and the goal of today really is to make community engagement accessible for organizations, farmers, whatever type of way that you are coming into this conversation. I want to show that it can be accessible to work with your community. I have a quick question for the chat, and I would love to know what type of community engagement or advocacy work are you already involved in? So if you could take a second to throw that in the chat, maybe mention what type of organization you are. We're not going to have a discussion about it, but I know Anne Marie is going to be collecting all of the responses from our questions today and sharing them out so that hopefully we kind of have some brainstorming happening. Okay. So I want to start by saying that you might be coming from a nonprofit space and might be a little bit worried about jumping into any type of advocacy. And I wanted to make it clear that nonprofits are allowed to advocate. It is legal. If you're a 501c3, you have to be nonpartisan. So we cannot endorse candidates or parties, but we really can engage in issue-based advocacy and like voter registration, education, and engagement, and much more than that. Also, I want to encourage you to not let grants and contracts deter you from engaging in advocacy work. We and our clients, a lot of times, are constituents of the government, and so it's important that we make our voices heard and we really center our clients' voices. And impending federal or state cuts mean it is really important to make sure that elected officials know how much need there is in our community, and they need to be told and they need to be reminded. And I will say that like we were not getting enough funding before. Like in the old administration, there was still a huge need. Hunger has always existed, but now people might be paying attention because of a new administration. And I think Craig is right. We can't just focus on what is top of mind, but while people know that we are in crisis mode, I think it's advantageous that we take advantage of that. So we need to make sure that we are really reminding people of what the need is here. And as we all know, food insecurity is really skyrocketing in our region. I'm not sure what other folks are seeing, but I know here at Shepherd's Table, our daily meals are increasing a lot. We're seeing an average of 422 meals a day at our daily meals program, when previously our average was about 372. We have not seen averages above 400, I think, ever. And over the past couple of years, it's just continued to grow and grow and grow. So I know that there's a need, and I'm sure that all of you know that there is a need. So it's really imperative that we partner with the communities we serve to work towards solutions for this, especially while we see this crisis continuing on, even though crisis funding is pretty much gone. And the administration is targeting the people that we serve, especially people of color, the immigrant communities, and the unhoused community. And I don't think that that is a partisan thing to say. So I want to make sure we all know that the combined efforts of people with lived experience and those with deep policy or logistical expertise are a really, really powerful force together. And when we fail to center the voices of people with lived experience and impacted communities, our advocacy is less effective. And sometimes we spend time chasing solutions that might not even be applicable. And it's important to know, like, data is really good and helps us make more effective programs, but stories are very compelling. Personal stories, especially ones told by the person living that story. Also, in advocacy work, it's really important to Skillshare. So learning about how the advocacy system works or the food security system works and sharing that information. We don't want to be the gatekeepers of how to move in the system. We want to make sure that our communities are very well equipped with as much knowledge as possible so that they can advocate for their needs, and then they can move towards solutions that they know will work best for them and we can support. Also, this is important for building capacity for a movement. If everyone has a really good knowledge of how this works, we can be more effective and more powerful, especially together. So I want to get started with how do we jump into community engagement. I really suggest you start by making a list and leverage existing relationships. You might be a food provider like Shepherd's Table, and you might have people showing up to your doors every day, and your staff or volunteers might have trusting relationships. It's really important to leverage those relationships that are already built on trust and to continue nurturing those. And it's also okay if you don't have a daily program, if you meet once a month. but I think it's really important that we think through what's already there, and where those person-to-person contacts are. And it's okay to start small and really nurture those. So mentally go through the people in your community and make a list of who you have those existing relationships with. The question that I have for this slide that I'd love to have everyone talk about in the chat is, how do your participants or your community members receive information most effectively? The reason that I have this flyer on the right is because this is an example of a flyer that I use at the very base of my advocacy program. I hold community listening sessions because I believe that starting with feedback is a really good way to open that conversation and move towards thinking about systems. And some things I want to point out about this flyer are that it's just a Canva template. It was not very time consuming to make. It says snacks provided. That is a very important part of this. It's very colorful. And most importantly, it is on paper. Not right here, but when I'm giving this out, I am printing it out because I know that my meal guests respond best to a small paper in their hand that is colorful, that has all the info they need, that says there will be snacks. And I've learned that that's what they respond best to. Also, the font, I think I mentioned, needs to be very big. So I want to make sure that the relationship building and the information sharing starts at the very beginning of any type of base building for advocacy. The next step for me is going to be outreach and follow-up. The way that I typically invite people to an event is either through canvassing, so just distributing as many flyers as I can, with a QR code, talking to as many people as possible. Maybe I don't have a trusting relationship with them yet, but I'm just making sure that gets into everyone's hand. Or I'm doing targeted outreach where I'm having one-on-one conversations with people I already know. And there tends to be a higher success rate there. But I think both are really important if you have the time to do so. Again, I want to point out this flyer on the right. So this is actually the back of the flyer I showed in the previous slide. What I have found really helpful to be a conversation starter and a building block is to write down the questions that we're going to talk about, or write down the agenda. So I can hand out that flyer, or even like somebody on our ops team or a volunteer can hand out that flyer and then say, this is what we're going to talk about. Absolutely no pressure. If you don't want to come, you don't have to. But think about these questions. And a lot of times it will spark a conversation of, what are our areas that need major improvement? Usually they will have 3 things on their mind, and I will listen to 1 or 2, and then I will say, here's a pen, write it down. I cannot wait to hear more about this in a setting where we're ready to take that feedback. And I really hope you come because this sounds really important and I want to know more. I have found that that works really well, especially in outreach. So once you do that initial outreach, maybe you have an event, you finish the event for your base building. The follow-up is really, really important there. I think sharing notes and results, sharing what changes you're going to make, sharing any improvements that happened is really important. You need to communicate everything and show that you actually did listen to your community. And I think people really appreciate that. People appreciate seeing like, oh yes, they were listening to me in that moment. And also continuing to ask for feedback. You can say like, did you enjoy it? What would you have changed? Would you come back? I think feedback, again, is a really good way to build trust. And then also I want to flag that it's really important to build in time during your follow-up to listen to whatever needs somebody might be having. You are probably going to hear, especially in feedback, about some essential needs that people might not have, and it's really important to be there and be present for that. So I just want to flag that as an important thing to do. The next step in what I call scaling things up is mobilizing. So maybe you started your outreach, you've built some relationships, maybe even just 2 or 3 people. You go to an event, you shared, you gave feedback, you listened, you learned together, and you followed up with them. Then the next step is to really pay attention to who showed up to those events and who seemed excited about sharing their feedback and stories so that you can take that to the next level. The next level for me is often county events. So we're going to get into it in a little bit, but like budget hearings, town halls, anywhere that people can either listen or there is going to be a place where they have a voice. That's going to be the next step. Some things to think about for mobilizing is accessibility. I would say that the biggest barrier in between community engagement and like county events or any type of advocacy events is accessibility. It's at a bad time of day, it's during a meal time, there's no transportation, it's in the wrong language, there's no one to babysit your kids, and you don't know what's happening. And I think all of those things combined are real barriers. So making sure an event is accessible is a big commitment, and I want to recognize that. And it is a really worthwhile commitment, and I think it builds bridges and makes people feel really welcome. So as you're considering mobilizing, many of us are food people. Food is my thing. At every event that I take someone to, if I know they're not going to have food, I'm catering it myself. And it's like kind of a big ask, but I think it really does make a difference. And it also makes friends with other organizations. I know transportation is really tough. What I've seen other orgs do is just get an Uber account and offer to call somebody an Uber from their house and make sure they can get there and back. Language, I know with a lot of county events, if you ask for language accommodations, they have to provide one. And I provided the link for that later on. You also want to make sure all of your materials are translated. As for scheduling, it is rough with outside events, but if you can have any control over it, I would always suggest asking about it. And then for info prep, I recommend sharing as much as you can. Okay. Okay. So now I want to get into the FY26 budget, which I think for me has been the most successful way I have been able to include meal guests from here, as well as people from across the county, not just my meal guests. As a lot of you guys probably know, in the fall, the county executive does town halls all across the county, and they have like a Spanish language one, Chinese language one, Black and African American community one, and then like Silver Spring and like kind of regional ones. I have found that this is a very low risk, high reward way of including people. I also want to say that budget advocacy is not systems change work. A lot of times we are, like, I know at least for me, I am asking for more funding to be a Band-Aid, to like stop a crisis or something like that. But for me, this is a really good way to get people involved in a way where they are able to take the microphone and express their needs directly to the county executive. And I've seen it be very powerful and effective. For many folks, including me, it's the first time people see advocacy in action. The upcoming budget hearings in April are also a really good space. If you're a little bit nervous about going to these ones in April, I would suggest as an organization, maybe you come, and then there's always a budget next year. And so think about building some relationships now, and then we can be ready for hearings in the fall. I think there's always opportunities, and we just have to look for them. I do want to say the next hearings, the deadline to sign up is April 4th, which is why we're having this meeting today, was with the intention that we can be prepared before then and come together as like a food security community and talk about it. The oral testimonies are April 7th and 8th at 1:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. And I think it would be really valuable if the food security community picked one and we came together as the community. I think there is power in numbers. And so, yeah. Also, I want to point out this picture here. This is one of my meal guests, and he was able to advocate in December. And I'll talk a little bit more about the successes that he had, just kind of as an example. But yeah, I want to show that it is a commitment, but it is very doable if this is something you want to really take time and invest in. So about a week ago, a smaller group of some food security folks talked about some advocacy priority suggestions we could kind of present. I think we have I don't know if Anne Marie, you have the link, but the OFSR County Council staff report came out. The this should say 26, but the FY 26 budget proposal came out. And I know I have been pouring through it to see what got more funding, what got cut. I know that as a community, the food community, we are pretty strained as it is. So I know we really want to keep us whole, if not increase funding. We talked about the current need versus the projected need. Considering, federal and state budgets, we probably won't know what the state budget looks like until after the first week of April. And we know federal job cuts are coming. We know that, yeah, the economy is not looking great. So we can really, unfortunately, expect food insecurity to continue rising. It was suggested that we could ask for a 2% increase in OFSR food security grant programs, because I know grant programs don't get that the same inflationary rise that contracts do. We talked about other critical services like housing, medical care, and childcare. And we really cannot have those be cut because we know that those are root causes to food insecurity. So we want to make sure that we are protecting on all sides. I have also been working, since we serve mostly unhoused individuals, I have been working on figuring out what they want to advocate for in terms of housing. And we actually went through a really intense process of voting. And we came up with demands and then matched them to budget demands. So we are going to be advocating for emergency rental assistance for eviction prevention, homelessness programs such as rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, emergency moving and storage, so that in between someone gets evicted and hopefully finds other housing or might go into the homelessness system, and then retrofitting for disability. Just so that people can have access to the amenities in their own apartment. I would love for everyone to drop in the chat if they can. What priorities have you identified and what priorities have your participants identified? And if you don't have any participants, I would love to hear about what your community is talking about in terms of what the need is and places where maybe you've seen a budget decrease or where we know that the need will not be met by this current budget. So you could take a second, put it in the chat. Would love to see it. Yeah, Diana, I agree. We need more food. Okay, I'm seeing them start to roll in, and I'm loving it. And I want you to keep these in mind, continue thinking about them and dropping them in the chat. And I'm going to move on to the testimony crafting guide that I created in coalition with Housing Justice Montgomery. It was created by my friends at Jews United for Justice and HJM. And I have led this budget crafting guide as a workshop to tons of different people. I've led it here. So like mostly unhoused or housing insecure folks. I've led it. I think later this week I'm going to be leading it with the Green New Deal interns. And it's been very successful. So I'm very excited to share it. And yeah, I'm all about sharing resources. So we're going to go through it together. Can you guys still see the new screen? Cool. Thank you. Okay. So typically when I lead this workshop, it is printed out on paper, but I think this could easily be moved to Zoom if necessary. So I want to start off by saying many folks in our community do not trust the government, especially now. And so it is really, really important to provide space for that and to not brush that off. So with that in mind, we start with 3 options. When you complete this workshop, this can just be a practice for writing your story. You can take your writing home. No one ever has to see this. You can hold on to it and think about it. If you ever want to do something with it, it's there for you, but there is absolutely no pressure to do anything with this. Another option we have is sending your story directly to a legislator. So this would go, like we could scan this and email it to somebody's office. So only your representative could see it. And it's not going to be like submitted to the public or anything. Or option 3 is submitting this as oral or written testimony. And this will be public information. And it will be used to inform all of the council members on why our fight is so important. And we need to flag that if you're creating oral testimony, make sure that you can read it in 3 minutes or less comfortably. Also, if you need any interpretation or accommodation, email this email. Roman, who I mentioned, needed some accommodation. He had suffered a medical event not that long before his thing. And so he just needed some extra time, and the council members were really happy to do that for him. And it led to a really, I think he was very comfortable and confident while doing it. Also, I have the county council hearing calendar here linked, which we can find if you're going to print this out. But yeah, so I want to provide space for people that are not comfortable with this. One thing I've learned through leading this workshop and teaching in other spaces is that writing is really, really personal, and everyone, like kids and adults, need a lot of encouragement and need to be built up so that they feel comfortable sharing anything that they've written. So you want to make sure that the environment you're giving is like really encouraging for them. So we have 5 steps in this. Step 1 is introducing yourself. Step 2 is making a clear request. Step 3 is telling your story, which is the very personal part. And we want to tell people just how powerful their story is, because, you know, it really is. Then you're going to explain how food assistance would help meet your needs. This was originally for housing. This can be for any issue. And then step 5 is just reiterating your ask. So here is the writing workshop, and we're going to send this out so anyone can use it. I will say a lot of times when people do this, they end up writing really long paragraphs in these small boxes. So you might want to give people a suggestion to brainstorm in this space. Write bullet points, because we have lined paper at the end where they can put it all together. But step 1 is, who are you? We tell people, you start with your name. You also don't have to start with your name. You don't have to put it in there if you don't want. But it's important to connect yourself to your community as you frame and tell your story. So a lot of times people here will say, this is my name and I live at this shelter and I've been here for 6 months, if they feel comfortable. We also suggest people say what identities they hold. So maybe they're a father. If that's really important to their identity, definitely put it in there. We also say, like, what other types of communities are you a part of? Like a faith congregation, or maybe a school community, or maybe in our cases, like a client of Shepherd's Table or a client of Man of Food, if that's how they want to identify themselves. Then in step 2, we're making a clear request. Step 2 is where I want everyone to think about the budget asks they put in the chat. This is where we put them. If you have multiple demands, I put a bulleted list and say, like, pick the ones that are central to your story. And hopefully you develop those budget asks together so that they really are applicable to their story. But if not, you know, you can be vague. I do suggest being as specific as possible, though. Here's just an example that people use. Like, I'm writing to urge Montgomery County to increase funding to food service hubs, somewhere where I can get both my food needs addressed and access other social service help. This is the spot where if you have numbers, I would use the numbers. Step 3 is telling your stories, which is the sensitive and vulnerable part. And this is where you want to be really encouraging and just reinforce how powerful it is that people are being bold enough to share what they're going through. The way we frame it is, have you ever struggled to not get enough food? Have you ever had a need that has not been met? Tell me about what happened. How did that situation make you feel? I think that is also very powerful in testimony. And I'll get to an example of it later, but we have some examples here. And this is probably the part that takes the longest, so I would allot some more time to that. This is also very helpful, the sentence starters of I have experienced, I have lost, or I have seen how ... Those are very helpful framers for people. Step 4 is explaining how better food assistance would help meet your needs. So we have some examples here, but the way that I always frame this for people is, I don't know if people remember in elementary school science class, you learn about a hypothesis in an if-then format. So if this happens, then this happens. And I have found that that keeps people very concise. So for example, if I knew that my kids would have 3 meals a day, then I could focus my budget on paying off my medical debt or paying rent. I have found it to be hugely successful, and people really understand the if-then format. And it's something that I think, yeah, everybody should use in your testimonies. And then the last step is just really clearly restating what your demand is again. We love to hit it with the respectfully, I ask the council to ... If you have a last line that's really powerful, maybe in the story section, maybe it's good to move it to the bottom, but ending on a very clear, this is what I need, because ... and keep it short, but yeah, keep it powerful. And then we have our lined pages. When I send this to you, you feel free to add more if people need more space. But yeah, we give some time for people to write through it. Yeah. Here is an example of a spoken testimony that came out of it. Kelly, I see you've raised your hand. Would you mind dropping it in the chat? Thank you. Okay. But yeah, so this is just what has worked for me. Feel free to change as much as you want. This was developed for December. We had a budget supplemental appropriation for $3.6 million for housing programs. And we started leading these testimony workshops. And we wrote through this together. This is an example of a testimony. And I wanted to keep the highlighted sections in here because these are what this guest needed coaching through, like verbally. He had trouble like tripping over his words. And so we went through it several times, and he said, like, I need this to be in a different color. I need this to be in a different color. Bold this, bold that. So I wanted to keep this in here to show that, like, it's okay to to make sure that this is as easy as possible for you to read and be able to do it in 3 minutes. So yeah, that's the end of the crafting guide. And I do want to say that as a result of this testimony, we did pass the $3.6 million unanimously. The council was brought to tears after hearing this. The client was brought to tears after hearing this. When council members are brought to tears, write down who is crying. Take note of who is resonating with this, because that might be a partner in the future, not to take advantage of that situation, but we need to know really like who is listening to our community. So yeah, I was really, really proud of this person for sharing their story and being so open. And yeah, I'm gonna go back if I can. Here we go. So yeah, I think that is the end of my workshop today. I know we're gonna have a bit of a discussion afterwards, but I just wanted to say thank you so much to the Food Council people, all of you guys, for being so open and supportive and like providing so much extra support and making a space for this community. And hopefully we can continue moving together and moving effectively. And then I also wanted to say thank you to HJM, Everyday Canvassing, and Jews United for Justice for helping to formulate the guide and talking through things. And I'm really excited to keep working together with all of you. And I encourage you to please reach out to me, especially about the budget hearings in April. I would love to build a food platform. I know it's a little bit late, but if you want to talk about food or housing, please reach out to me. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Brenna. And thank you to everyone for being so engaged in the chat, seeing lots of comments, lots of ideas, lots of good feedback. And again, we will pull that all together and share that back out with the community. Before we get into our larger conversation, I just wanted to share a few quick other items to keep in mind going into this process. So first of all, again, thanks to Brenna for also sharing about the upcoming opportunities to engage with County Council. We will share links about where you can find the current recommended operating budget. We will share the links about where you can register to participate in the hearings. Also, just to note that the state's budget is obviously going to impact the county's budget. And we don't have final word yet on when, the state budget is going to be decided, if that's going to happen as planned in April, or if a special session may be necessary because the state may want to wait and see what happens at the federal level. And so just kind of like the cascading effect that all of that will have to keep in mind. Wanted to make sure we also mentioned that along with the larger budget presentations, there are also individual programs that then present on their budget. So like OFSR will have a date scheduled where they will need to present on their budget to County Council, to smaller committees, other programs, such as that Brenna mentioned today. So keep those in mind as more good opportunities to get out there and to have your presence and your client's presence felt and heard. We will share the dates when we have them for the OFSR hearings for those of you that are interested in that. A few other items that we will share out in follow-up from this. I do apologize again that we were not able to move forward with the County Council Town Hall that we had planned for food assistance providers, but we greatly appreciate all of the feedback that we received from food assistance providers who had registered for that. We took all of the questions that you asked and put them into a one-pager document of the greater issues that your questions were touching on. We're going to share that back with you so that you have that. That could be helpful in writing your testimony. We are sharing that with OFSR, with our county council contacts, so that message will be out there. We also did put together a list, kind of mini bios on all of the current county council members and their committee assignments, their websites, again, just so you have all of that information at the ready. Who is for which district, who is at large, who you might want to also do some personal communications with, along with greater information on the budget. And finally, just a good reminder that back in October, for those of you that join our food security community call, we did have a presentation, wonderful presentations from the Capital Area Food Bank on their 2024 hunger report and on the Community Action Agency's self-sufficiency standard for Montgomery County. I will share the links to those presentations as well, because again, a lot of really good information in there about the cost of living in Montgomery County, facts about hunger in the area that you may want to include or share with your clients that you are engaging in advocacy issues. Before we move into our larger conversation, I did just want to highlight to Jackie DiCarlo, who was already acknowledged by Craig, and also Britt from the Children's Opportunity Alliance, and really appreciate them being here today. The Children's Opportunity Alliance has just released their own common agenda and has done a lot of work in advocacy in the space around early child care and early childhood issues, which we know, again, an important issue when thinking about financial security and food insecurity in the county. And Jackie, for those of you who maybe somehow don't know Jackie, I don't know. I really appreciate her joining here today to share a little bit about the work that she had done over the years. I feel like every time I went to a county council hearing, Jackie was there. And so just, Jackie, maybe if you can kind of kick us off by sharing a little bit about, forming a presence in the space and kind of what advocacy looks like throughout the year and not just, as part of the budget cycle to, again, give people a sense of, like Brenna mentioned too, like there's definitely things we want to do this year, but what should we be doing as organizations, throughout the year to build those relationships, and make the presence and the issue of food security known in the space?
Certainly happy to do that. Thanks for all that embarrassing praise, Emery. But Craig did a great job, as somebody already said, rousing us. The call to action was so important. And I just was scribbling notes when Brenna was talking. Shepherd's Table, of course, 365 days a year for decades, has been on the forefront of this work. But Brenna, thank you very much for this very practical stuff, and I can't wait for the links and the workbook. So maybe what I'll do is just kind of emphasize some things that really resonated, and especially around the power in numbers. So if we can, by the end of this day, or however the Food Council wants to do it, figure out if there is going to be a mass, which day, which hearing to show up. And that's really good because it's not just staff. Then you can get your volunteers to show up. You can get your board members to show up. Maybe we can pick a color and all wear a t-shirt or something like that. So I really thought that was a great point to underscore. Also, just not to forget, after you use that wonderful guide and you do a testimony, you can repurpose it. So first of all, what you write doesn't have to be the 3 minutes, because those 3 minutes do go fast. But your written one can be longer. But then remember, the staff are the ones who read them, so don't give them your PhD thesis. But my point is that you can start to take snippets and put it on social media. You can use it to write letters to members of Congress. So that time that you invest in a testimony can really be multiplied, and certainly put it in your newsletters and all of that. The relationship building piece that Anne-Marie just mentioned, I will say, yeah, it's probably like we'll do what we can for this budget, but if you don't already know your own council member, you really remember that you're a constituent too. So whether or not you're the ED of mom like Dana, or I see so many people like I always, when I talk to a council member, remind them that I vote in their district. If I do, obviously, Natalie Fanny Gonzalez is mine. But don't forget those 4 at-large people. Those all work for you. So lift that up as well, and remind your board and your volunteers to do that. So it is a year-round thing. So that happens, go to as many free events as you can, and pigeonhole them, or twist their arms or whatever, but in a nice way, as Brenna was saying, when you take note of who's crying, but also take note of what they've said from the dais when they're on cable television. Write it down and remind them of what they said, so that can be really helping them be accountable. And then 2 things, walk in their shoes. I just mentioned the staff, but it is a $7.7 billion budget, and we are one of many priorities. So I think if you go in and you, when you're talking in your testimony, or when you're seeing people at events, you just be aware that they have lots of asks that are coming to them. And if you can have a certain sense of reality check, humility, I think that resonates, or that's been my experience. And then a little bit of just, I hope I don't sound too cynical, but we have to remember that the county executive race has started. So there are term limits, and so you have to listen and tell your story with the awareness that some people are running for positions. And I don't want to make too much out of that, but it's just another walking in their shoes. Remember, these folks are politicians. They serve their community through elected office. And there's Craig gives me a thumbs up, and he knows about what I speak. So He's walked in those actual shoes. So I'll end there unless Anne-Marie, is there anything I missed that you wanted me to say? I did think that your points were really good, Anne-Marie, about committee work is very critical. So showing up at HHS committees if you can, and being reminding that those committees, the rest of the council, and again, Craig can correct me if I'm wrong, but the rest of the council really follows the lead of committees. So it's rare for them not to all agree. So if I know you're really busy serving the community, but if you can make time to even just on Zoom watch the committee hearings so you understand what those three people, most times it's three in HHS, are saying, you can help create your testimony that resonates with what they've said. Anne-Marie, did I do my job?
Perfect.
All
Perfect.
right. Thank you again, everybody who made this meeting possible. It's really exciting.
Thanks. Britt, anything you would like to share, either from your own, work in this space or what you heard today?
I mean, I just want to thank everyone for caring so much and working to make a difference. I can't add anything beyond the expertise and the great training. Just to say that early care and education is not only an issue for working parents, working individuals, people with children, but it's also for the early care educators themselves who often find themselves food insecure. And so if they can't live well, they can't provide quality education, and then people can't work to improve their life outcomes. So it's all sort of interconnected with housing and transportation as well. So, and I just really appreciate everyone's passion and commitment for improving outcomes around food insecurity. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Britt. Thanks for joining us. So Jackie had also raised about, a date. We have, at the Food Council, we have not selected a date yet. I think we were kind of looking to coordinate with the community, though. I think our preference, though, would be an evening session, just because we felt like that would be probably something that would be easier for more members of the community to attend, would get more community engagement. And so that was just kind of the start of our discussion there. I am going to the chat just to see if anyone had thoughts in there. And I don't see it, just one plug for possibly the April 7th date, but does anyone, Carla, your hand is up.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say also, social media is big. So when you're doing your events and you're having your distributions, not just reach out to your council member's office, but also invite them to your events, invite their staff to your events, tag each other on social media, because that is important. Your people are not my people, and my people aren't your people. So that gives more people to see. And, just always try to put the work that you do on social media, because that platform has arms and legs that can reach places that we can't reach. And although I don't have TikTok app, TikTok is really booming out there, and you just really have to have a really good social media person. And just don't elect them in office, invite them to see the work that you're doing, because that is critical. Because sometimes you say it at these hearings, and if they don't see it, or they don't see the people that is impacted by it, they'll never really know. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Carla. We appreciate you being with us today. And I think, Carla mentioned something about staffing, which is so important to say again. We know that many organizations, you may not have a social media person. You may not be able to have a policy person. Shepherd's Table is incredibly lucky to have Brenna and to have that position there. And so I think that's why it's really so important, again, for us to come together as a community and find ways that we can kind of leverage each other's skills. So again, if this is something that interests you moving forward, please feel free, to keep connecting with us. And seeing how we as the Food Council can kind of help create those spaces. The way we kicked off this process was prior to the CE releasing his budget. We did get together, with a small group of food assistance providers that shared that they were interested in talking about issues with us. And the Food Council did submit a letter to the CE's office, advocating for support of food systems issues and food security resources. And so, again, we are happy to explore those opportunities moving forward so that, you shouldn't feel that just because you don't have a staff person or you don't have the time to go out to yourself, that there's no way for you to engage in the larger issues. I did see a number of topics come up in the chat, as Brenna was giving her presentation. I know that we had touched on if there were other relevant issues that people felt were important to raise as part of testimony. I'm happy to give some space here to talk through some of those items. We talked about, other root causes that contribute to food security. We talked about just the spending on food programs themselves. Serge.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Anne-Marie. It's a pleasure as always to get a chance to see you and connect with you. I don't know if this was mentioned before, and if it is, forgive me for bringing it up again. I think that it's high time that this county, and by extension, this whole DMV region, rethinks the idea of fully funding smaller organizations that do great work delivering food and delivering other services where possible at the local level. I believe that in this county and in the DC area, there is a size bias. I know it may have been brought up many times before by other people, but in light of what's going on in Washington and what is likely to go on in Washington for the next several years, it's become even more salient. We must fully invest in organizations that are smaller, that do actually do great work. They may not have as many staff people, and they may need some help when it comes to reporting and other technical assistance. It's time that we invest in these organizations, recognize them for what they are, and give them the space to continue to do what they do, but fully funding. They're already trying to raise money privately. They need a little bit more of a boost and perhaps even some respect from the county government locally and even regional governments too. It's past time, and we can no longer sweep this under the rug, to be blunt. That's all I have to say on that, and thanks again. And that should be brought up too.
Thanks, Serge. And I can't speak for other parts of the DMV, but obviously for Montgomery County, the community food assistance grants, I think are a step in that direction. The county investing $3.7 million, to varying levels of food assistance providers and supporting various levels of reporting requirements for that, recognizing, abilities and resources in that space. And then, again, their support to the Food Council to provide that technical assistance in Montgomery County, especially through our peer learning circles program, for areas where we are, trying to work together and identify, resources and ways of operational issues that can really support each other. So, I appreciate those community food assistance grantees and hubs that have been participating in those spaces to help make that happen. But thanks, Serge. Jamil.
Hey, hello everyone. Thanks for having me. Anne-Marie, thank you. So I did some good work as part of a curriculum for CHW curriculum. I had to go and do 40 hours So basically, I think that this county has done a stellar job, just a wonderful job in in aspects as with food and everything. But one of the issues that I realized that upon when I went to go and do my community service, the I think there's an issue with the diversity. I think that because what happened was when I went there, um, I dealt with some issues that were a contradiction to this county's plans as far as with food, giving, delivering food and everything. And I don't think that stigmas should be, because I dealt with a stigma, me and my fiance, when we went there to do our take care of our hours, do our 40 hours. And we were dealing with some things that did not belong there. And the people at the top, when I said something to them, their response was, well, the people that we have here that are usually here helping us to get this organization ran and get food out to everybody in the communities, they're the ones that are making it run. And so the head of the organization just said that he just kind of lets it slide by because they are the ones that keep it moving. And I felt bad. I didn't even, to be honest with you, I didn't return there because the things that I seen when I was there was a complete contradiction. Whatever everything we talked about right now, and I've witnessed the opposite being done at a specific organizations that give food to the community. And I think that this is I don't know if anyone knows about this, but this is a serious issue because this is going on right now. And I've seen people firsthand come up and they asked me, could they go get food? They pulled up looking confused. They didn't think they can get food, even though they seen everybody else coming in and leaving out with food. I noticed that they didn't think that they can go in there and get food, and they didn't even go in actually. Even after I told them, they didn't go in. So I don't know if it was because they had a bad experience there, but I've had more than several while I was there. And I've seen this done to plenty of people that were coming there. Now, keep in mind, I was hungry before I went there, and I went there thinking that I can get food because they told me, "Hey, come up here and get food." But when I got there, I had to face a whole lot of other things, and that the stigma it drove me away.
I'm sorry to hear you had some bad experiences in the community, Jamil, and I think you know I I think we can definitely see at a national level, unfortunately, the stigma that exists around people who might need food assistance, and I think that especially moving into um, folks in our community who may have never experienced food insecurity before, but as a result of federal cuts or federal layoffs may have to start seeking resources themselves. I think that there's a lot that will have to be done to both kind of reduce their own stigma about accessing it, but also making sure that providers, may see different folks than they are used to seeing, and not you know, uh, and kind of be more educated in that space. But thanks for joining us today, Jamil.
Absolutely, thank you.
I'd like to shift. We still have a little less than 20 minutes, but I feel like, again, if there are folks that would like to, kind of share about other priorities that, they might like to explore with the budget dates. Again, I'm seeing some preference in the chat for April 7th, noting that folks may still be in Annapolis that day, so there may be more room on that date than on the 8th. So that is something to keep in mind. I know we were looking, I apologize, I didn't get Craig while he was here to share what Mana's plans might be, but we can kind of do a check-in and share that out and let you know when the Food Council has kind of picked their date and roll that forward. As far as colors, I think, Brenna, that's the one thing you didn't touch on that we had talked about in a previous conversation, but keeping in mind really like back to basics, grassroots, right? Like we see lots of signage at the hearings for the county executive, lots of organizations wearing, if you have a t-shirt or any other kind of identifying clothing from your organization, that is great to always wear and call out. But Brenna, can you share a little bit? I know when we ran into each other at the CE's budget hearing in Silver Spring, you were definitely with a very coordinated group. Can you share a little bit about what folks were doing then?
Yeah, so that was another time, that was during the town hall.
Yes.
I don't believe we were wearing anything, but something that was helpful for that was, again, like I brought food. I think I brought 50 meals to that. I created a prep guide with some background information, fast facts, and like question starters. And then beforehand, we gather together as a group. In this beforehand, where you gather as a group, in organizing is typically when you solidify your speaking roles. So who is speaking, who is listening, who is providing like in person, like people power of being a supporter. That's also when you can create signs. It's when you make sure everyone knows each other's faces. And you make sure everyone has a really clear understanding of demands. That specific day, there was the group that I was with, and then there were two other groups for like various different causes. And I think we were really mindful that night of uplifting each other. And I was actually really proud of that. I think it was the Bethesda African Cemetery and I think Montgomery County for Palestine, and everyone was very supportive of the housing and food work that was happening, and made sure to really like point center the voices of impacted people in our county. So yeah, like I think it was a great experience. And I would suggest that if we do something like that, we do gather together, make sure we come at 5:30 or 6. Somebody brings signs to write. We agree on, I think somebody suggested wearing green. And we are very clear in our demands. With hearings like this, we already know who's testifying and when they're testifying. But we want to make sure that we see who, so that if we want to like hold up our sign during that, we know when we're doing that. If that answers any questions.
That's great, Brenna. Just Lucia, I see your hand. Just Allison is reminding me that in many of the national hunger organizations, orange is a common color. I think it's also very attention getting. So that is something we might want to consider. Surprisingly, I have an orange shirt. I didn't think I would, but I actually do. So I'm ready to go if that's the color we go with. But Lucia, please.
So my question, and Marie, hi everyone. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces getting together today. So my question, Marie, is if there's going to be a collective ask, and if there's going to be some pointers for organizations to craft their stories around those asks, so that there's a cohesive message sent across.
Yes, and thank you, because that was something I had on mind that I had forgotten to mention. I think our point here today is that there is a time and a place, and everyone is perfectly at their liberty to advocate for their own organizations, but we want to make sure that when we're coming together in this space, that we are really supporting overall resources and support for food security, for those root causes of food insecurity. And so we will definitely, like I said, kind of be sharing out. We've highlighted some of those issues, and we can look to see what we can share out that you might want to include, especially if you're submitting something written, for your own organization. If you could maybe also kind of include a standard paragraph just about overall support for the food security space, because I think, what we know more and more is that so much is kind of coming at the community through a series of paper cuts, right? Like, through changes in SNAP, cuts in SNAP at the federal level, or potential cuts to meal programs at schools at the federal level. And then, greater responsibility having to be taken on by states or local governments, to meet certain cost sharing that, more than they had in the past, and how that's going to affect things. So I think we really do need to send a strong, clear message that we want to support those resources overall, and not so much worry about individual, organizations when we're coming together like this. I certainly understand everyone's right and need to advocate for their own communities and their own work, but I think we want to take advantage of this space, to just elevating the overall need, because if someone gets cut, right, it's those clients are not going to go away, right? They're just going to start coming to someone else's distribution, right? Or if your SNAP benefits get cut, then you start seeking more food assistance than you had. So we're not operating, in a vacuum. Everything is all connected, and is going to have an effect on each other. So I think we really need to get that message out there.
Anne
Stephen.
Marie, I can't find my virtual hand, so I'm using my real. If real hands are still allowed, yeah. I wanted to make everybody aware that in the General Assembly down in Annapolis for the last 3 months, there's some legislative activity going on relative to public services in sensitive locations, including like churches and libraries and courthouses, other public meeting places and all that. There's at least 3 bills being considered that would call upon the state attorney general to develop guidelines to create consistency around the county in terms of how immigrants are viewed in terms of public services. And any place where there are county resources that are being expended, or any place where the state resources being expended through the county, whether it's through counties or whether it's through contractors or whatever, that these pieces of legislation, each of them in their own way, would provide clarity and consistency, and I think would help us to reduce some of the psychological trauma from all the waves that have been crashing on our service shores for the past 6 months.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm seeing in the chat some pulling around April 7th. So I think we can confirm that back in a message out, but that looks like a community supported date in the evening. And we have a little bit under 10 minutes left if there was someone else who wanted to add to the conversation. I'll give you all a moment to think that through. While you do, I will share just a few brief announcements that we will be having our April food systems advocacy call on, sorry, let me make sure I get my date correct. That will be on Wednesday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. We're going to be joined by Benjamin Yellen from the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security. He's going to provide us with a recap of the 2025 Maryland legislative session. And I'm also hoping that we can have a recap of those of you who participated in the county budget sessions, this will be after that time. So hopefully we can come together again and share a little bit about how we feel that all went. So again, we will share out the registration link for that in a follow-up message. Wendy is asking if we can testify on behalf of a participant who might be concerned. I will share here that, again, keep in mind, for this, we are talking about advocating at the county level, and there is nothing within county government, that is posing that kind of threat. We have been reassured multiple times by our county government about, commitment to serving residents and not asking questions about citizenship and, the need to prove that for services. So I just wanted to, remind that here. I know that for many folks that still doesn't alleviate a concern. I would just go back to Brenna's point about when you are sharing someone else's story, that you make sure that you are making that clear, that you are sharing what you are hearing about from clients at your organization, but really put it in terms of you as an organization and what that means to the level of assistance you may be able to provide, because I think we just want to be really careful about, and I'm going to look to, I think Elizabeth kind of moved off my screen, but, a while back, the Food Council had hosted a training on, culturally competent storytelling, and about the caution of kind of taking over someone else's story, and the concerns there. So we can share a link for that as well. But Brenna, do you have anything else to add on that note that or explain it a little better than maybe I did?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very real fear. I think if you're going to do that, the way I would approach it is like they would write it fully and give very explicit consent to whatever you are exactly going to say. And if that's what they prefer, is that it is read for them and there's like consent there, then yeah, I think that's fine. You just want to be very transparent with them and supportive. But yeah, I think it is a very real fear, especially in Montgomery County.
Thanks, Brenna. Okay. I'm happy to stay on for another 5 minutes. I'm happy to give you all 5 minutes back in your day. But again, I just really appreciate everyone coming to this space today. I hope you find the resources useful. We will share those out pretty much very quickly. They'll probably be going out in the next day or so. So you have those at the ready. And we will communicate, about steps that the Food Council will be taking, and how you can join us. If you're not able to, please just feel free to share with us what you are doing. We'd love to, make others aware of that, or if there are others that can't make that date but are looking to connect with other organizations that may be going on different dates, we're happy to, put people in touch around that. So please do feel free to reach out and share with us what you're doing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Thanks, everybody.